A few years ago, if someone told you how many steps they'd taken today, how many hours they'd slept last night, what their heart rate variability was, and how recovered their nervous system felt that particular morning, you probably would have assumed they worked for NASA. Today, that's just Tuesday. Smartwatches, fitness trackers, rings, apps, and health monitors have become part of everyday life. In many ways, that is a good thing. But what happens when the tool becomes the boss? What happens when we stop listening to our bodies and start listening exclusively to a piece of technology on our wrist? And what if some people are collecting more health data than ever before while becoming less healthy at the same time? Today on the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast.
Welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast
with Garrett Williamson.
Health, wellness, exercise, nutrition, and a whole lot more. Got questions? Call us and leave a message at 251-278-EDGE or message us at Personal Edge Fitness on Facebook and Instagram, at Team PE on Twitter, or personaledgefitness.com.
Welcome to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast. I'm Garrett Williamson, president of Personal Edge Fitness. Over the last several weeks, we've discussed preserving muscle, improving nutrition, and even why moving sideways may be one of the most important things you can do for long-term function. Today, we're talking about technology, specifically wearable technology, and whether these devices are helping us become healthier or simply becoming another thing to obsess over. The myth is simple. More data equals better health. Most people assume that if they're collecting information, they're automatically improving. But information and improvement are not the same thing. Imagine stepping on a scale 20 times a day. You would certainly have a lot more information, but that doesn't necessarily mean you'd be healthier. The same principle applies to wearable technology. Data can be extremely valuable, but only if it changes behavior. Let's start with the positives, because I'm actually a big fan of wearables. Got one right here on my wrist. Wear it all the time. There are many positives. Wearables increase awareness. Most people dramatically underestimate how sedentary they are. Most people think they're active simply because they're busy. Those are not the same thing. I dealt with this concept with my father. He felt like he heard that walking was good for you, and the way he got around the hospitals when he was going on rounds was he walked, so he felt like he walked a lot. And so he was busy, but he really wasn't exercising. So simply thinking you're active simply because you're busy, those aren't the same thing. A smartwatch can reveal some real uncomfortable truths. And I had this happen with a very fit client. And they told me, oh my gosh, I walked so much. And then I put something to measure it on, and they almost threw it across the room the next day. They thought they moved all day. Turns out they took 2,700 steps. And the same thing can happen with all different measurables. You thought you slept well. Turns out you were awake half the night. You thought your resting heart rate was normal. Turns out it's climbing. These insights can be extremely valuable, and we use them often. Awareness is often the first step towards change. In fact, I would think it's always the first step towards change. One thing I genuinely appreciate about wearables is how they encourage movement. Not because 10,000 steps is magical. It's not. The body has never once said, congratulations, you reached exactly 10,000, check done. The value is that most people move more, and moving more is almost always beneficial. The danger becomes when people become attached to the number instead of the behavior. The goal isn't steps, the goal is movement. Steps are simply one way to measure it. We see the same thing with people that obsessively weigh themselves. Lower is better, and if it's not lower, something's wrong. This is when the tool becomes the boss. This is where things get interesting. Have you ever noticed how some people wake up feeling great, then they check their watch and suddenly feel terrible? The watch says they only slept 6 hours. The watch says their recovery score is low. So the watch says they're stressed. And now they're convinced they're exhausted. Nothing changed except the information. That's not technology helping. That's technology influencing perception. I've actually had clients tell me, Garrett, I was going to work out, but my watch told me not to. Think about that. For most of human history, people assessed how they felt by paying attention to their bodies. Now many people ask permission from a battery-powered bracelet. One of the things we've observed over the years is that the healthiest clients usually share something in common. They pay attention, not just to data. They do pay attention to data, but not just data. They pay attention to themselves. They notice how they feel, how they move, how they sleep, and how they recover, all in how they feel. They also notice, instead of what is the number on the scale, they notice how do their clothes fit. We saw this phenomenon happen when heart rate training became so significant. We used to have heart rate monitors that we loaned out in the facility because we had read all the information about heart rate training. We thought it was highly beneficial, and it is in many ways. But we saw people obsessing over that number, and even trainers that were training clients according to what the number said, not on how the client felt. And that's when we first started realizing the problems between collecting data and running every program by the data and not running it by what we call RPE, rate of perceived exertion, how they actually felt. The biggest mistake wearables make is it isn't technological, it's psychological. Many devices unintentionally encourage people to focus on measurements rather than outcomes, just like I was talking about with heart rate monitoring. People become obsessed with steps, calories, sleep scores, recovery scores, readiness scores, stress scores, and sometimes they lose sight of the bigger question. Am I actually becoming healthier? Because ultimately, that's what matters. It's not the score, it's the result. All right, this fits perfectly into my live age philosophy. Many people believe technology will solve problems that behavior created, but technology doesn't replace movement. Technology doesn't replace nutrition. It doesn't replace sleep. It doesn't replace consistency. It simply measures them. The watch, the device, the ring, whatever it is, it can tell you what happened, but it cannot do the work for you. Just like a calendar can tell you how many days you have and how old you are, but it can't determine what you're capable of. You knew I was going to go there. So, okay. Let's look at a weekly challenge on this. This week, I'm not telling you to get rid of your wearable by any means, but I want you to use your wearable differently. Instead of obsessing over numbers, ask yourself one question each day. What behavior is this information encouraging me to improve? Use the device as a coach. Just don't use it as a judge. It was never intended that way. All right, we've gone over wearable technology, what it gets right. And please don't take for this that I'm not a fan of wearable technology. Big fan of it. But it also can tell where it becomes misleading and why data is most valuable when it inspires meaningful action. Technology can be, and as far as I'm concerned, is an incredible tool. But tools work best when they remain tools. The goal isn't to collect information. The goal is to improve your health, your function, and your quality of life. And learning how to use technology without becoming controlled by it is just one more way we help you reach your level of wellness. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Personal Edge Fitness Podcast with Garrett Williamson. Subscribe now and be a part of the show by calling 251-278-EDGE or message us on Facebook and Instagram at Personal Edge Fitness or at Team PE on Twitter, and visit us at personaledgefitness.com.
Did you know only 22% of 8th graders are proficient in civics? It's a statistic that affects all our futures. But Alabama's Liberty Learning Foundation is changing the headlines. We partner with schools to go beyond the textbook, teaching civics, character, and financial literacy in a way that empowers students to make a real impact in their own communities. Help Liberty Learning Foundation build the leaders Alabama needs. Join the movement today at libertylearning.org.